everybody. Welcome to the Customer Success Office Hours webinar for the 21st of April 2020. This is the new invite, so for those of you that are watching live, thank you for resubscribing. For those of you that are picking up off YouTube, I will actually post the link in there for the new subscription. I've forgotten to do it so far, but as always, this does get posted to YouTube within a few hours of the live chat, so you can pick it up from there. We've had quite a few new subscribers following us on Twitch, so if you're watching live via Twitch, feel free to drop a question out in the chat panel. I promise this week I will pick it up. I've been known to miss it before, so sorry about that. So we have Annabella and Donal online from Customer Success and our GSS organizations, and I have Pablo with me, a fellow architect from the Customer Success EMEA team. So a bit of an open agenda as usual, so any questions are welcome. Anything you want us to talk about, I've got a couple of things to talk about, and what we usually do is we dive into the release notes, have a look what's new since we last chatted. There's been a few new things. In actual fact, there was some new stuff as of yesterday, which is quite good. And then I wanted to talk through a design challenge that came up recently that was I thought was pretty interesting. It's not necessarily one we can talk about specifics and customers with, but we can talk about the scenario, and maybe you can come up with an alternate way of doing it, or you'll take something from this, you'll learn something from it. So before we kick off, every time somebody joins, I will allow you to I'll change your settings so you can talk, so feel free to unmute yourselves. Hi Brian, hi Darren, thanks for joining. Hi Asaf, we're just kicking off. So like I said, I'll just dive into the release notes, I guess. First of all, we've had a few new things come up since the last time we went through them. Obviously, the last major release was version 1.10, and we dove into some of the features there a little bit. It's been a couple of weeks since we took a look at this, so there's been a few new things. So first of all, if we go back to the 8th of April, there are a couple of new features. So EDRS rapid scale out, and a kind of a new back to an old way of working, like a credit card self sign up availability for the service. So if we just have a very quick look at the EDRS rapid scale up feature first of all. So for those of you that are familiar, we have let's have a look on one that would be good to look at. Within I'm not sure we'll be able to do it actually based on our number of hosts. So within your cluster, when you start with a cluster of 3 nodes, we give you the option to scale out based on memory or compute, and you can set those based on performance or cost, and you can set limits to them. Now, what's happened previously was we had to scale up one host at a time. So you'd add a host, then there'd be a bit of a delay before it actually happened to rebalance, and then you'd be able to add another host and another. So it wasn't really an effective strategy. In fact, we recommended against using it for things like keeping up with a migration to the platform, that sort of thing. But with the advent and the more of an uptake of VDI on the platform, the BU have kindly introduced rapid scale up, which adds 4 hosts at a time. I think we briefly talked about it last time. So it means that you can kind of use it for different use cases, and it allows you to quickly scale out in the event of DR, so you can keep your warm DR site slightly smaller, for example. And then the self-service credit card charge, which is pretty cool to go back in there, so you can sign up using a credit card. I guess one of the only things here that is really worth taking note of is the fact that it will put a $2,000 pre-charge on your card. So this is credit for you to then burn down as part of your sign-up. But the advantage there is it means you won't run into any situation where you potentially get into arrears or get into debt with us, for example. It's a true sort of self-service and pay as you use. We're just going to preload it with some credit. Any commentary on that at all? Any any ideas. Anything you would want to know in more detail about those two features? Let's have a look. Sorry, we can look at the EDRS. It was my bad. I'm just being a bit of an idiot. Thanks, Asaf, for just poking me in the face there. Obviously, you look at the EDRS settings within the cluster, not within the SDDC view. And here we see the rapid scale out option at the end here. And obviously, of course, default storage scale out is always enabled regardless. Thank you, Asaf, for nudging me there. I think I've got too much homeworking on the brain right now. So the new one as of yesterday, the SD-WAN for hybrid cloud, really new feature. I'm not massively familiar with our SD-WAN product, or VeloCloud as you may know it, but it's definitely going to help. So VeloCloud as a solution, as a product, is kind of a I don't know if you know much about SD-WAN products at all, or how they function or what they do, but VeloCloud as a solution that we bought is in with one of the major telecoms providers in the US. They actually have VeloCloud devices in all their POPs. So when you actually deploy VeloCloud for yourself and you connect to their service, you're getting end-to-end Velo usage. What it does do is it optimizes your WAN overlay to connect between VMware Cloud on AWS and your sort of different environments with dynamic multipath optimization. What I have seen about SD-WAN and some of the testing and the results have been incredible. Like as a product and as a solution, things like Skype and other VoIP services that function over hosted services are very compute intensive and very latency sensitive. And what we've seen with things like VeloCloud is where you've got multiple connectivity options. We had one customer who was running with a T1 line and then a backup broadband line to one of their contact centers, and they were experiencing a load of jitter and a load of sort of noise on the line, which meant voice comms were impacted, a lot of digital interference. They deployed VeloCloud as a solution, and they actually had an outage of their primary line, and there was no awareness in the contact center whatsoever. It carried on functioning. There was no downtime. There was no outage. So as a use case or an example, I don't think you get much better than having a contact center losing its primary internet connection and actually having no downtime to its voice comms whatsoever. So definitely worth looking into. Maybe in a future call we can look into getting some demos of the monitoring software up and running. Definitely want to look at. Does anybody have any questions or anything we'd like to look at in more detail there? Donald, you've unmuted.
Just on the SD-WAN, we're actually running it with a number of our own people at the moment who are working remotely and don't have sufficient bandwidth on their broadband.
Cool. To be fair, I would like to say that I've actually got a VeloCloud box sitting on the desk right next to me, and sadly I haven't deployed it, and it's been sitting there for a few months now. But I would like to claim that I'm just too busy to deploy it. But yeah, it is fantastic. Every example I've seen of it flattening out unreliable network connections, it's incredible how it functions and how it works. We had it.
It's very straightforward to install.
It is, yeah. So you and it's kind of profile based as well. So you can effectively ship them out to remote sites and then hook them up, and they're based on a management profile that you pre-configure and you sign up to, and then it sets everything up for you effectively. So yeah, once they're done, I think the reason I haven't deployed it is because we were hooking up to a test environment, and it meant that everybody could effectively see everybody's network traffic in our test, in our little loop. So I was trying to work out how to set it up in standalone mode, and I'm clearly just not clever enough. But yeah, it is a fantastic product. So apart from that, and the recent 1.10 release, is there anything else anybody wants to talk about from a feature perspective that's come out fairly recently? If So I
I will
just
say one other thing to mention about VeloCloud that makes it a very unique offering is it leverages part of the infrastructure that is deployed on our end, on the VeloCloud end, is I believe it's called cloud gateways.
yes,
And basically, what it is, it allows traffic from mostly from branches to not be pinned through a core data center to get to the cloud, because one of the issues, especially when we see a lot of AWS and Office 365 services, that usually when they're just out there in the internet, it's hard for organizations to control access to these through a WAN from a branch office. So if they want to control the traffic, they have to pin it through their core data center. Whereas VeloCloud allows access directly to what's called cloud gateways that are sitting very close to these hyperscalers, and then you can still control the flow of traffic and monitor it over the WAN link um, directly from the branch to the cloud without pinning it through the core data center. Where this is a great use case for branches going to VMware Cloud and AWS, because it's basically doing the same thing.
yeah, good point. Thank you, Saf. So yeah, those points of presence, those cloud gateways, for example, I think it was like I mentioned before, AT&T's default appliance. So every single POP they had, every hyperscaler location they were in has one, one or more of these cloud gateways in. So you're kind of guaranteed end-to-end VeloCloud acceleration and optimization. Cool. Anything else on recent releases? I see we've got some new people on as well. Timmy, I recognise your name from our recent calls. Welcome to the chat. There's a few new people on that I don't recognise. Feel free to unmute yourself, say hello, ask a question. It's kind of an open forum, so we will talk about a few things. But if you've got anything in particular you want to know about, jump in and share the love. We'll have a chat about it. So what I will do is I do a roundtable with the architects at the end of the call as well. So I kind of ask about anything that's any of the architects have been working on recently. It's been quite interesting. And ordinarily I leave myself out of that, but I'm going to start in reverse order today and just talk about something I've been working on with a couple of colleagues from the specialist SE team and a few others. We had an interesting requirement come to us where a customer has an on-prem environment and they want to kind of replicate it in the SDDC, which sounds fairly normal right now, but they want to have each network segment in their SDDC, so each kind of subnet within their SDDC go out to a different native VPC in AWS, and then have that as their default route out to the internet. So lots of stuff going on, lots of configuration options within AWS to think about. And I've kind of got it configured in the lab so we can show it, and it might make a bit more sense. But they wanted to be very clear that traffic could only go a certain direction, and we had to have multiple default routes out, which for those of you that know, at the moment within the SDDC, you can kind of configure a single default route for all traffic. So the way we kind of got around this was by, let's just go back out. We're in my SDDC right now. So what we've deployed in here is multiple network segments, and we've just given them color names just to make it nice and easy to follow. So we have a blue, a green, and a red network. We have a red network that's kind of like red A, so this is one that we're linking back to an on-prem environment. And the way we've got around our sort of current limitation of a single default route out is we've configured multiple policy-based VPNs that then go out to multiple transit gateway attaches on an AWS native transit gateway. And then each of those transit gateway attaches has its own routing table, so that each of these VPNs can then basically have its own default route set. So everything that sits on the blue network, for example, goes out via this VPN, goes out to its corresponding transit gateway attach, and then from there that transit gateway attach routes to say the red VPC, and then everything going out to the internet goes out via the red VPC, and that way the customer in question here can actually monitor all traffic. They can segregate the traffic for each of these networks and have the multiple default routes out to the internet. It was a really interesting case because like I said, the limitation of a single default route within the SDEC, and having to link on-prem to this at the same time. We can't really have a network from on-prem stretched and then have that hook up to multiple VPNs. So it all got a bit complicated. And I'll give a shout out to my colleague Vern Belinius, who did a lot of work over the weekend in the lab to help me get this running. But it turns out it's the exact solution. It fit the brief perfectly, and now we have we're undergoing testing of workloads sitting in each of these red, blue, green networks, and able to then monitor and segregate that traffic. So anything anybody would like to know about the use case here, or any restrictions or any reasons we've designed it this way, or even any alternate solutions you might have for how we've configured this. And don't be shy, remember, because it's as much as I like the sound of my own voice, it can be boring for everybody else. No? Okay. So I guess right now, if I'll put the shout out for any questions whatsoever, anything anybody would like to see us talk about, any features or designs. Otherwise, I'll do go round the loop and ask if anybody has anything specifically. Feel free to unmute yourself. You should all be unmuted already anyway, but Zoom does have a tendency to remute you.
Yeah, maybe I'll touch upon a quick point here with this policy-based VPNs.
Cool, yeah.
So, as you can notice, there are multiple remote public IPs, which is good, because the policy-based will not allow us to configure overlapping subnets under its configuration to the same remote public IP, meaning we cannot do multiple default routes with the same remote public IP. So it's good that we had separate public IPs generated on the TGW side for each VPN attachment, and that, I guess, enabled us to configure multiple VPN tunnels for multiple local networks.
Yeah, it's a good shout actually. So this is the first thing that stumped us, wasn't it, Prasanna? And I was remiss in not calling out that you helped massively on this as well. So yeah, we kind of set up the first VPN and we set a default route, and then we pointed it to the primary transit gateway public IP address, and then we tried to set up the second VPN, and obviously we couldn't set it up to the same remote public IP. And then we were kind of stumped, thinking, well, you can have multiple route tables, so routing from the transit gateway wouldn't be a problem. And then we realized that each transit gateway attach had its own public IP, and that kind of saved our bacon a little bit there. And then we can, in each of those transit gateways, so if I just show you the transit gateway, how it looks right now. So we have this transit gateway, and then we also have these attachments, and we've linked each of these to either the VPN or the VPC. So we've got a green attached back to the VPN, and we've got a green attached to the green VPC, as we're calling it, and the same for red and the same for blue. So let's have a look. So we can look at the associated route tables. So if we look at the route table for green, for example, there we've killed propagation, so we're not propagating routes, and we've effectively added in a couple of static routes. So we have, default route out, which goes out to the VPC, and we have the route back to the VPN. So the network there, 168.22/24 was that green, was it? Yeah. There we go. Green, yeah, 168.22/24. So in the end, it became actually really simple. Once we got the process nailed down, it became quite simple to then replicate, and we can scale this out. And then we realized that actually they're going to be we have to take into account other things like transit gateway config maximums, for example. So I think there's a soft limit of 20 transit gateway attaches you can do initially, but again, like most of the soft limits, you can put a request in and we can get that increased. We don't know what the maximum is. I've heard rumors of 100 so far, but I'm not entirely sure. So what we might have to do is to have a chat with AWS and see how many attaches we can click onto there and how many different routes we can then manage. Otherwise, in this instance, the customer would be limited to X number of different colored networks and different labs they can run at any one time. But yeah, it became quite straightforward once we got our heads around the fact that we had a multiple public IP addresses available to us. Good point, Prasanna. Thank you for that. Anything else on here at all that didn't make sense or you'd like a bit more information on, anyone? Cool. Okay. So I'll start my bit that I like to say is throwing people under the bus, but it's not really. I'm just asking our architects what they've been working on, anything cool they've seen of late, like we've seen this, anything that maybe you need to look out for, or any best practice, any good practices that they've come up with of late. And I will start at the top because Asaf's been quite vocal today. Anything you've been looking at, Asaf, that you'd like to share that you think's quite cool, or a little nugget of information?
Recently, the only thing I'll say that's cool I've been working on is with HCX. One of my customers is looking to move several hundreds of workloads, and they want to automate, or I would say script all of it. And with their current use case, they're going to leverage bulk migration, and they need to re-IP everything. They cannot extend any networks. They have it's a financial organization. They have a lot of VPNs running on there, so they have to re-IP everything. And one of the partners they engaged to do that is going to leverage ParseCLI. The issue is that the HCX module does not allow re-IP. It's leveraging relatively an older API call that is not allowing guest customization. So that's something that I've been working on, and there's, I would say, maybe a beta version of it now, of a ParseCLI a partial module that leverages the new API to perform bulk migration with guest customization. So that's something that expect that to be on our team call, and potentially I will share it on VMware Code or something similar.
Cool. So is that something, I know there's a similar functionality coming in the product as HCX and SRM align more and become kind of more embedded with each other, but is that the approach with PowerCLI and updating of APIs, is that something that is coming in a future release of HCX? And if so, do you have any kind of awareness of how far down the pipeline that is?
About the ParseCLI integration, not yet. I know that the APIs are there. It's just kind of understanding the documentation and the different, I will say, minutiae of what value should be entered where, etc. It is in the GUI, but it's not in the ParseCLI module, and I don't know when that is coming. But the thing is, the customer needed it now.
Yeah.
So. Something that I've been working on that we can leverage in the meantime as well.
Cool.
All it does is just create the API call.
So you heard it here, folks. If anybody wants to do this, it's Asaf at VMware.com. He will happily write the PowerCLI. No, only kidding. But yeah, do reach out if you have a similar sort of requirement where you need to script a large number of bulk migrations. Reach out to us. I'm sure if we can't help, we can certainly point you in the right direction or share some code that already exists. But yeah, no, that sounds pretty good. So what, when you say they're doing bulk migrations, are we talking tens, hundreds, thousands here, or?
Their numbers change, I would say, on a weekly basis. either it moves anywhere between like, oh, we need to migrate 800 VMs to we need to migrate 1300 VMs, and it kind of shifts as they discover more applications that they need to migrate and some that are not needed, but we're talking about several hundreds of VMs. Yeah.
And have you come across any problems with the bulk migration limits at all, hitting the?
Not yet. They're running. We're still kind of in the early testing phase, moving dev and pre-prod environments. So that's usually waves of, let's say, 50 VMs every 2 weeks at the moment while they're testing things out.
Fair enough. I know you're looking at doing things, some of the restrictions like picking up early on, like raw device mapped VMs and physical raw device mapped VMs and cleanup operations as well, like you do in a traditional migration.
Yes, that is. It's not something that we're doing because they have engaged one of our partners to do that, and so the partner is doing application dependency mapping and creating all the using Bernie to create all these migration groups, and as part of it, they're also verifying if there is anything that will limit or prevent block the migration.
Cool. I was just thinking if you're writing a script to migrate, you could sort of pre and post script it so it can check for bad candidates before you start, and then run cleanup operations at the end of it as well.
Well, the script that I'm writing is more kind of like it's not to do the entire migration. It's basically if you've used the parcel.i module, there is a command called new HCX migration.
Yep.
That basically just does the migration and validation. That is what I did. To create, I call it new migration v2, just to distinct between the two of them, and that will just give you the possibility of creating a single migration with guest customization, because that is the need that we have right now. All the validation and everything needs to have a lot of inputs to it. I can share it next week's call if you want.
Yeah, a couple of weeks from now. So we've gone bi-weekly or every 2 weeks, depending what bi-weekly means to you. So yeah, that'd be really interesting to see. Thanks, mate. Cool, thank you. Pablo, you're up next. What have you been looking at recently?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So something that came up for me recently is questions for a customer that has right now NSX-T on premises and is thinking of moving to NSX-T and also connecting to VMC. So as we know, we have NSX-T 2.3 right now. So there are some things that you have to take in account when you are migrating from NSX-T to T, because for example, most of these customers are using automation, okay?
Yep.
So they usually use the API to manage NSX-T. Right now they want to use the same on NSX-T. So there is not so much command right now that we can use, but some of them are because of the limitations that we have with the permissions, because you can do everything as premises, but you can do a lot of things. So I think I can share my screen. Can I do it right now?
Sure, yeah. I'll stop my share and then we'll drag this over here. And if you want to share, it should be good.
Let me check this is the right one.
Yeah. The API guide?
Yeah, okay, so this is the API guide that we need to follow, okay, for NSX-T on VMC, which is right now this version, 0.3003,
yep.
Okay, not the 3.0, that is actually, I think it's the last one, if I'm not correct. And we need to follow this one, okay. Also, we have another good blocks, okay, to start to work on the integration. It's almost written recently from William Lamb, where we can find how to work on this, how to get the rest, how to connect also to the VPC on AWS. We have a lot of notes that we need to follow, okay, about the policies. For example, some of the commands are hard-coded. Okay, we can see this note here. So we need to change some of the commands. For example, most of customers that right now has some scripts with the array in automation, they will need to rebuild some of them with the new APIs. Okay.
Sure. I mean, that goes back to our constant recommendation, doesn't it? That most stuff should work, but you'll need to check it before moving over, right?
Yeah, exactly. We need to use the PowerShell, the VMware.VMC, and it will be work as usual. Okay, and also I have another tip, which is about the last version of the VROP Cloud version.
Yep.
Which is interesting because we have right now parity with the VROPS 8.1, which is the last version with the VROPS on Cloud, which is really interesting because right now VMC and AWS is an endpoint for VROPS. You don't need to install a new plugin or add-on as we have to do in the other versions, and it's fully integrated with login side, with automation, on some service, and we can connect it always as Azure or Google Cloud, and so we have some good links where we have all the information related with this. Also, you can connect it to VMware Skyline Advisor, which is something that I want to ask to the people that is right now in the call. If someone has any advice or any experience with VMware Skyline Advisor.
I don't. I've only seen our internal usage of it. I haven't. Yeah.
No, I was just curious because it's something we are talking right now a lot, but I didn't have the opportunity to work right now with this. But I think it's really interesting. And I think more or less that's something that I will want to share with you right now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Always good to get tips. What you did remind me of there when you were looking at that is something that one of our other colleagues shared the other day, and I don't know if people will have noticed. If you can just kill your share for a second, and then I can reshare mine. Thank you. Just do this. We have started publishing build numbers with our releases. So something we've added to the docs lately is the SDDC version, and then the version of ESXi and vCenter and NSX in the SDDC version, and also then the hardware version as well. So something that used to crop up quite a bit earlier in the early days. People would ask questions about, what version am I running? What version of ESX is in there, and the default answer was it doesn't really matter unless you're intending to go there and then come back again. But now this information is available in the VMC on AWS docs, which is quite useful. And you'll notice there that actually we've been running vSphere 7 for a long time before it came out as an on-prem version. As you know, we often run 2 or 3 releases ahead, and we kind of have a branch off the core bits. So ever since version 1.9 came out, we've been on vSphere 7, and 1.9 came out quite a long time ago now. I'm trying to remember, it was back in September, was it, when it came out? I can't remember. Quite a long time ago anyway. So just useful information really, to see which release you're working on. Then if you are doing sort of API stuff like Pablo was just talking about, at least you now know the version of the API you need to look up. Brilliant. Who else have we got online that let's have a look. Okay, Prasanna, you've already chatted a bit. We did some work on the stuff I was talking about before with the transit gateways, but anything else you've been looking at of late?
Yeah, maybe I'll touch upon a couple of items. So we missed some of those minor feature improvements. Maybe it's me, I might have missed this, I might have been there for a few releases. The ability to accept or acknowledge and reset the alarms.
Yes.
We see in VMC vCenter.
Yep.
So I just noticed that our cloud admin now has the permission to acknowledge and reset those alarms, because I used to see requests from the customer that they were not able to do this before, but I just noticed I can do it, and also the cloud admin carries those privileges. So I just want to see if it's just me or it's been there for some time.
To be fair, I haven't noticed. I do remember clearing out some alarms in this lab maybe a week or so ago, but no, I don't know if it's like a new thing that's just one of these features they've dropped in. Let's have a look. There we go. Reset that to in. Well, there we go. We had an alarm. I just got rid of it. Cool,
So
yeah.
previously we were not able to do that, right? So I couldn't find this on the release note, so I just thought I will bring this up.
Interesting. So what you're saying, Prasanna, is we're giving so many bonus features that we're not even listing them anymore.
Yeah, bonus.
Cool. Anything else, mate?
Yeah, there's one more thing regarding the enterprise federation integration.
Yes.
So we can also use third-party IDPs like Okta with our vIDM
Yep.
tenant. So one of the frequent issues we see is the identity response that is sent back from the third-party IDP and what is expected within vIDM doesn't match at times. And we now have, or we have plugins called SAML Tracer. We have this tracers for both Chrome and Firefox. So once we activate that plugin, we can actually see the responses sent back from the third-party IDP to the vIDM, and we can correlate what is the response sent and what is the current configuration within our vIDM tenant. So I found this to be a pretty useful troubleshooting tool. It might be more relevant if I show this visually, so maybe I can show this next week if I can set it up somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Again, in the week after next, when we're but that'd be really good. So we've got a SAF and you competing right now. That's good. We'll have loads of content. But yeah, no, that would be really useful, because I know that the first time I went to set this up, we had a number of challenges, and often, like with VMC itself, we often see that it's the odd firewall port that's blocking something, or but yeah, to be able to trace it and find out where it's going wrong is it can only be a good thing. And if it's a plug into the browser, that should make it even easier. There's a vIDM setup change that's happened recently as well. So in the past, it used to be somebody like myself or Prasanna that would have to get involved and work with you, the customer, and our internal SRE guys to get this set up. But now it's kind of we've been removed from that link, so it should be more scalable and faster for you to be able to get set up. All you have to do now is log a support request ticket, and you get walked through the process by your support guy who works with the SRE team in the background as well. So yeah, hopefully that will allow many more people to federate with the cloud service portal a lot faster, rather than us, customer success or similar, being a bit of a bottleneck for that process. Cool, thanks Prasanna. Now just to down to Zach, I guess. Zach, what have you got for us?
Nothing too exciting, but I've just seen a lot of questions around DHCP relay lately, and how that if you want to use DHCP relay in the SDDC, none of your segments can have DHCP enabled. So when you go to create the DHCP relay, it's basically like a separate object, and then if you try to apply it to your compute gateway, it'll error out if you have any other DHCP segments enabled. So it's either one or the other at this point. In the future, I'm guessing once you're able to create multiple compute gateways, which are essentially correlate to T1 routers and NSX-T, you'll be a little more flexible. But that's not quite in there yet, although you can kind of see it in the UI where shows your compute gateways. So, but that's mainly for to enable. Yeah, we can take a look. It's really going to be enabled for when vCloud Director comes. Yeah, but I'm guessing it'll allow you to create these independently without vCloud Director, just so you can, kind of keep the, logically separate networks if you wanted to. But at this point,
it's just for show, right? At this stage, so we're not using it for anything.
Yeah. So this isn't. Yeah. So tier 1 gateways. Yeah, I'm not sure if we have any detail on how that's going to work. Probably not.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything. Prasanna, are you aware of anything?
No, I also heard this is specifically for the Cloud Director service.
For folks that aren't aware, the Cloud Director service is kind of an overlay for managed service partners to allow them to create sort of separation in the same way that VCD used to be used in, or as is still used in the past as well. Maybe we can get one of the partner guys on a future call to go through it in a bit more detail. But yeah, thanks for that, Zach. So anything else from anybody
to add to Zach's point, so previously we had to delete all the DHCP enabled segments before we can switch to DHCP relay. But now we have the ability to just disconnect the segments and switch to DHCP relay without removing all the segments, which is a major inconvenience for the customers before. But we can just disconnect the segments and switch over to DHCP relay.
Yeah, that is really useful. I can imagine I've got a number of customers that if you ask them to remove the segments, they would. The answer wouldn't be polite. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so I worked with a colleague of ours from the same team but based in Asia Pac, a guy called Shashi, who some of you may well know. And we had a customer requirement who had to deploy more SDDCs, and they wanted to replicate everything they had, and they had hundreds of firewall rules and like hundreds of segments and stuff as well. And he very cleverly wrote some automation to export or everything, all the firewall rules and stuff, which is now a public KB article. But then he wrote the trickier bit of cleaning all that content up and then enabling the re-import into the new SDDCs. So we're trying to work on getting that published as a fling. So I'd say watch this space really. Hopefully there'll be a fling out soon to allow you to export and then re-import all your firewall rules and stuff from and networks from one SDDC to another in a consumable fashion. Okay, cool. Thank you, everybody. If there is nothing else, there are no questions that have come through on Twitch today. We've had a few people just commented that they've had to drop as well. I will wrap it up here. If there's nothing else, I'll give everyone 5 seconds to shout. I don't think there's anything. Timmy, Priyanka, or Darren, do you have anything you'd like to ask at all on the Zoom session? If not, thank you for joining.
Well, thanks. Good session.
Thank you very much, Darren. Yeah, as I've mentioned several times, we've gone to every other week's cadence now. Please feel free to share the subscription link. I'll post this up to YouTube if you are watching on YouTube later on. Thank you very much. Feel free to add any comments to YouTube, anything you'd like us to see, any questions for future calls. Thank you to all my colleagues for joining, and I will catch you all in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Take care.